Hello, good evening, and welcome to Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television. Iron Port is proudly brought to you in association with the Ghana Revenue Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, and Ghana Link Network Services. They are operators of the Integrated Customs Management System icons at the ports. The show is also powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Indeed, our media partner is the Business and Financial Times, the BNFT. If you want to have a grasp of all that transpired on the show tonight, make a date and grab the Thursday edition of the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that transpired here on the show. Indeed, we are streaming live on our social media pages. On Facebook, we are streaming live at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPHA. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPHA. Still on Facebook, we are streaming live at Port of Tema. And on YouTube, we are streaming live at Eye on Port Ghana. My name is Kennedy Mona. We're going for a quick break. When we bounce back, we'll continue with the show. Please stay.
Every now and again, Goyle makes good things happen. This time, Goyle has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goyle Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goyle has that sorted. Goyle, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. Currently, my goods are on the IC, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
All right, so you're welcome back. It's now time for us to take a look at happenings in the Port and Maritime industry in the course of the week. And in the course of the week, officials from the TRANSNET National Ports Authority, TNPA, of South Africa paid a working visit to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. They met management of the authority led by the Director General, Mr. Michael Luguje. Plus, the fact that the Ghana Shippers Authority also in the course of the week organized the fourth in a series of sensitization workshops for truck and haulage drivers who plies Ghana's corridors. Let's take a look at these stories.
The Ghana Shippers Authority, in collaboration with some of the key actors in Ghana's transit trade, has once again held a sensitization workshop for haulage truck drivers in Tema. Together with the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Customs Division of GRA, Ghana Police Service, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the National Road Safety Authority, the workshop was used to deliberate key issues that impact the conduct of the transit trade along Ghana's corridors. Some of the key issues include the carriage of dangerous and hazardous cargo, non-tariff trade barriers, and the road traffic regulations. The Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Benonetta Bismarck, reviewed some discouraging setbacks that were identified during the fact-finding mission the authority embarked on prior to the sensitization workshop.
The latest fact-finding trip undertaken only last week, from March 7 to 11, on the Tema-Paga corridor revealed some rather disturbing results. There were altogether 80 checkpoints made up of 56 police and MTTB stops, 10 customs checkpoints, 4 immigration checkpoints, 7 axle load stations, and 3 forestry barriers. What is even more disturbing are the demands for illicit payments with the associated delays by these uniformed personnel at the checkpoints.
She said logistics and transport service providers have become even more crucial with the current wave of intra-Africa trade. Chairperson of the workshop and General Manager in charge of Marketing and Corporate Affairs at the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Esther J.B. Donko, said GPHA, along with its key stakeholders, will embark on continuous efforts to enhance the transit trade.
We have also worked very hard to improve our services at the exit points in Paga, to the extent that only 2 weeks ago, GPHA commissioned its Paga Transit Track Pack as part of our trade facilitation efforts. Indeed, during the commissioning, the Regional Sector Commander of GRA Customs Division espoused the newly built pack is increasing revenue for governments. Aside increasing revenue, he also claimed that the working environment for the officers at the place during examination and the drivers has also improved.
An Assistant Commissioner of Customs in charge of transit, Peter Antobre Ofori, said the Customs Division has deployed effective methods to curtail cargo diversion, deviation, improper parking, and overloading.
Yes, we have liaised with the Ghana Link, and they have distributed powerful tablets. And this is a sample of the tablets. So at the dedicated checkpoints, we ensure that we take pictures of the vehicle that has crossed or that have crossed those checkpoints. And then when the pictures are taken, it is automatically loaded onto our platform. And therefore, if anybody would want to do diversion, as you are saying, the pictures along the dedicated route will catch the person or will be an evidence that the vehicle did not reach the exit point.
A delegation from TRANSNET National Ports Authority in South Africa has visited the port of Tema to understand the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority's containerization strategy, as well as share theirs in efforts to strengthen existing systems and bolster the good cooperation between the two organizations. The group from TRANSNET also visited the port of Tema to draw lessons from the newly developed liquefied natural gas terminal in Tema. The delegation toured the port of Tema, including the MPS Terminal 3 and the new LNG terminal. At the meeting with senior management of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPH's team shared how it has been able to gain success in its hybrid system of port operations.
Terminal 1, 2 are multi-purpose, owned by the Port Authority. However, the operations in it are a combination of the private sector and us as well. The Terminal 3, you'll be going there, is a dedicated container terminal. It is one of the developments that has made our country one of the container hubs in the sub-region.
They were briefed on how GPHA is strategically positioning the port of Tema as the sub-regional container hub, while the port of Takoradi is being positioned as the oil and gas services hub for the West African sub-region.
It's always a pleasure for us to have sister ports visiting us. for us to learn from each other, at least to get to listen to each other and know what we are doing, and see how we could improve on either side.
Portfolio Director in charge of mega projects at the Durban Logistics Hub, Dr. Bridget Gasa-Toboti, revealed that her outfit is preparing to build an LNG terminal in the port of Richards Bay in South Africa.
We spoke a lot around the commercial structuring of an investment of this type. We spoke a lot around the potential options for the technology, the infrastructure solution that one must consider. We spoke a lot about how do you firm up a relationship across all partners, both public and private sector partners, so that you effectively deliver on an investment of this size and of this strategy.
She praised the level of operational efficiency at the port of Tema and did not rule out the possibility of partnerships between her outfit and GPHA in future.
We've learned a lot around the operating systems that are much more efficient for the port of Tema, which is something that we are also looking at doing across our entire port system. We've also understood the focus that GPHA in particular is having around how its value proposition should look around like in the West region. So consider this port as a transshipment hub, but also do anything necessary to grow the volumes of import and export.
In a related development, the Tema Regional Police Command and the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority have reaffirmed their commitment to continue collaborations towards the protection and security of Ghana's port environment. These reaffirmations were made during the maiden visit of the new Regional Police Commander, DCOP Daniel Kwame Friye, to the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. The Police Commander and the Director General acknowledged the significance of close collaboration to ensure that, together with other key security institutions, law and order continue to prevail in the port of Tema, a key asset to Ghana's economy.
So for now, we just came to thank you for what you've been doing for our previous administration, and also to assure you that we are also willing to work with you as you have been doing. We give you all the necessary support as within our capability, and ensure that there's improved security within the ports and Tema environs.
Your presence, reassures us that at least the port is safe at all times. We'll call on you when you are there. You are already at least patrolling the entire area to ensure that port business is conducted in a very secure manner. So we see you as strategic partners and not just tenants. And at any given time, any opportunity we have to even strengthen the partnership more and ensure that you can do your work better than you are doing, we are always happy to support in that particular direction.
The Police Commander and the Director General acknowledged the significance of close collaboration to ensure that, together with other key security institutions, law and order continue to prevail in the port of Tema, a key asset to Ghana's economy. The Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority is committed to minimizing the risk of incidents and accidents in its operational environment. In line with this, the Port Authority continually makes efforts to enhance its alertness and response mechanisms to potential negative events in the port environment. As part of these efforts, the Marine section of GPHA, in collaboration with allied agencies such as the Ghana Navy and the Environmental Protection Agency, recently partook in an oil spill drill in the port of Tema. The team deployed several of its sophisticated equipment and trained personnel in this simulation exercise. The exercise, according to the Deputy Harbour Master in charge of logistics at the port of Tema, Daniel Quote, forms part of the Ogbangami Express 2022, a multinational maritime exercise in Western Africa.
We were called in to attend to an oil spill at the anchorage. So that is what you saw us doing. We had to go in. We were 5 boats. Josephine Asante, Benowusu Mensah was the target vessel. We had Joseph Owusu, which was a work boat. We had the Osajifo, which was a security patrol boat, and we had the mooring launch. which was to help us to deploy the oil spill. The boom is 300 meters length, is the sketch type, and this vessel can scoop about 32 cubic meters of oil into the tanks. And we have another one, same 32 on deck, so total 64. It has also the capability to spray dispersant. That is what you saw us spraying from the yellow booms that we fixed here. And that on board is about 45 cubic meters of dispersant.
He said the Port Authority will continue to improve to ensure that the safety of the port environment is not compromised.
All right, so those were some happenings in the port and shipping industry in the course of the weeks. Now it's time for us to take a look at what's happening on the global stage.
A year after a giant container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal for almost a week and disrupted global trade for months, another evergreen marine corporation vessel has run aground, this time near the U.S. capital. According to Bloomberg, the Hong Kong-flagged Ever Forward got stranded after departing the Port of Baltimore Seagate Terminal last Sunday night, according to mapping data compiled by Bloomberg. The 334-meter vessel was en route to Norfolk, Virginia, when it got stuck in the Chesapeake Bay. Evergreen said it has arranged for divers to inspect the vessel for any damage and is participating in coordinating efforts to refloat the ship as soon as possible. The company also said an investigation into the cause of the grounding is underway. The Maritime Gateway portal reports that Maersk vessels are still calling at Russian ports to deliver containers booked before the invasion of Ukraine and to pick up roughly 50,000 containers stranded in Russia. The online portal says, as a result of what the Kremlin refers to as a special military operation in Ukraine, the shipping line has temporarily blocked new container bookings to and from Russia. Russia reportedly accounted for around 2.5% of the company's total sales last year. Stockholm Environment Institute has developed a groundbreaking platform that delivers information on cargo transported by individual vessels, the companies that own the cargo, and the greenhouse gas emission associated with global maritime trade. Named Global Shipping Watch, the platform is set to bring a new level of analytical depth, accountability, and transparency to shipping and international supply chains. As disclosed, the platform introduces a pilot version covering large trading countries such as the US and Brazil. It combines a detailed description of cargo in individual ships, including ownership information, with data on ship movements and operations obtained from satellites and land stations.
All right, so those were happenings in the port and shipping industry on the global stage. You can send us your comments ahead of the show on our WhatsApp line, dedicated WhatsApp line, which is 0559019177, 0559019177. Remember, at the appropriate time, we shall be activating the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. Tonight, we are talking ports in West and Central Africa. Particularly, our focus is on the Sustainable Port Partnership Initiative. What is it? What is it about? And so we have one person that is playing a very key role, cardinal role, in the Sustainable Port Initiative in West and Central Africa. We have in our studios Dr. Harry Barnes-Daban, who is Executive Coordinator, Ports Environmental Network Africa PENAF, Executive Coordinator, Ports Environmental Network Africa PENAF. Doc, good evening and welcome to Iron Port once again.
Good evening, Stan. Thank you for having me.
I think last year we were glad to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting discussion.
It's your first time this year.
Definitely, yes, it's the first
time. So Happy New Year is in order.
Thank you so much for that one. Yes, of course, yes.
Absolutely. So we want you to give us a brief background on the Sustainable Port Partnership Initiative. What is it about?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. It's, I would say that it's been triggered by a series of events. And then these events can be basically categorized into two. So the first one, like two factors, yes. And the first one being the fact that African ports historically did not really pay much attention to the issue of environment. I mean, until the year 2000, thereabout, for example, environment in African ports basically meant sanitation, port cleaning, and then beautification and that kind of situation. But from the 2000 onwards, I mean, as we turned into the millennium, there was a drive to actually make institutional reforms of our ports to make them more efficient. And that saw an increase in private sector participation in our ports. So we could see in most of African ports, well, let's look at our own kind of regional context. So Western Central African ports, then we found multinational terminal operators like Bolloré, like the Maersk Line, and then AP Mola, DP World, I mean, etc., amongst others, getting involved in the terminal operations of our ports. What happened was that as the ports got institutionally reformed, then the port authorities had to take on a new role to become regulators of the ports. And one of the issues they had to really regulate was that of environment. Right. Even though they were not really up to it, but it was a role that they had to take up. And just around that time also, environmental considerations had become key. I mean, a key factor in global developmental practices. And so these multinational operators that came into our ports in Western Central Africa came with a lot of environmental knowledge and practices. And of course, from where they come, you are obliged to transfer best practices from your country or from your region into where you go. And so they brought in some of these new practices that they had. And naturally, it affected the way our ports operated. So our ports then had to also take on the environmental challenge and then begin to take up roles to become competent in improving this. Of course, some of them had then set up environmental officers, and then they had competent professionals that were manning this. Just around that time also, my organization, Ports Environmental Network Africa, also started having programs with the Ports Management Association for Western Central Africa. Of course, we did the same also in East Africa, to actually begin to get them to work cooperatively on their environmental issues. The issue is that the issues were common among all the ports. I mean, what you find in Abidjan is the same you find in Ghana, in Tema, whatever there is. So these are some of the developments that were really taking place. So together with the Ports Association, for example, we organized the first African Port Environment Conference, which was hosted by the Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority in 2010. And it was held in Tema, which was really interesting. And then we also went to Mombasa in Kenya. And then we've had 3 series now. I mean, the last one was held in Congo in 2020. Apart from that, also, the PENAF also worked with the Port Management Association also on international environmental sustainability visits. So we took them to ports like Antwerp, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, Bremen, just to see what happens elsewhere, and then be able to
very well developed ports.
Exactly.
So those kind of like the benchmarks.
Exactly. So you look at it. You want to get the best practice, and then you get to understand why you should do what, and then find ways for adapting. So these developments were ongoing, and so the ports really acknowledged the need that yes, they had a common problem. They need to tackle it in a common approach.
What was the common problem?
There are several. If you look at even port reception facilities, like we discussed the last time, for example, ships are coming into our ports, but adequate facilities to really receive these wastes is a big issue. Some ports are ahead. Ghana, Nigeria, they are ahead, but other ports also are struggling. So ballast water discharge, so ships that discharge ballast water that could really bring in invasive marine species into our systems is a big challenge to handle. Oil spills. Like just what we just viewed before this program. It's also a huge issue, how to respond to these spills. So there are several. Pollution, for example. I mean, these were all issues that are common to the ports. And if there's a common issue, a common approach is the best way to do it. So then we have to get them to work cooperatively. And apart from that, also we also worked with the Abidjan Convention, UNEP, to also do the first strategic assessment of environmental policies in the ports in our sub-region. So these were issues that were being done, carried out to bring about the institutionalization of cooperation. But it was very slow. I mean, it was very slow. And thankfully, that brings us to the second factor. The World Bank initiated the West Africa Coastal Areas Program. That was in, I think, in 2018.
Before you come to that, you said it was very slow. Slow in what sense? Is it that the member ports were not willing to sign on to this particular partnership initiative?
This partnership initiative had not come up. So we're now getting into how the partnership initiative came. So I'm giving the background as to that. The ports themselves have acknowledged the need to do something about
the challenges that they were facing.
Exactly.
Okay, sure.
So gradually we're working together with them and building that ability to be able to do that. But it was quite slow.
Right.
So we get to the second factor that sealed everything, and that was when the World Bank in 2018 initiated the West Africa Coastal Areas program. That program aims to support the efforts of African countries or West African countries to improve the management of their shared coastal resources. And then also all the natural resources that they have, and manage the risks that affect these resources, and then in that way boost the transfer of knowledge and help them to really mitigate negative impacts on the coastal resources. And as part of that program, they then wanted to also then bring the ports to work together, because ports are sited in the coastal areas, and the development of their infrastructure is really affecting coastal erosion situation, for example. I mean, our region has huge hotspots on coastal erosion emanating from the construction of our ports, because it is done with pure engineering that didn't really consider nature. But you can't fight nature. It will come back. Sure. So then they sought to do this. And interestingly, this kind of decision that they had tied in with what ports and the Port Management Association of Western South Africa and PENAF were already doing. So then we had to build synergies. And so the World Bank said, okay, we want to do this. We can see it's there. And therefore, the Sustainable Ports Partnership Initiative came from the World Bank. Yes, and this was launched in April last year.
Okay.
So that
launched in April 2021?
2021, yes, in April 2021. And so the project, the Sustainable Ports Project, is a project that is owned by the Ports Management Association of Western South Africa.
Okay, PIMOCA,
but it's financed by the World Bank.
Okay. And
then it is facilitated by the Port Environmental Network Africa.
Okay.
So that is what brings me into the role of facilitating how this can be done. And so that gives us the background as to how this project actually came into being. So there are different factors, but they all came into one melting point when the World Bank, as a big player, came in to say, we also have the same idea, we want to do the same thing. And therefore, they had this partnership with the Ports Management for Central Africa. And then it's like, okay, PENAF, you're already doing this. Could we then work together? And that's it. So that's the background to the project.
All right. So how many ports are we talking about, Western Central Africa?
I think for this project, we have about 22 ports and port authorities. So spanning across about 19 countries. And so it's quite interesting and a big project, yes.
All right, launched last year, April 2021.
Exactly, that's when it was launched.
Run us through what some of the activities have been since the launch. What have you been doing so far?
Great. So then I would get to the objective of it, because the activities are emanating from what the objective is. So basically, the objective of the project is to establish and operationalize a kind of innovative but voluntary, collaborative partnership among the ports, so that they will be able to adopt and develop concrete projects that would minimize the impacts from the infrastructure, but also operational activities on coastal areas, but also living communities. So coastal resources and also on living communities. So whilst these impacts are minimized, then they would also be able to then improve on the positive aspects.
Right.
So basically, that's what this objective is. And out of it, it's expected that there will be a charter. It was expected that there will be a charter, but also a kind of benchmarking framework that will help them. So we have this objective of it, and then the key expected outcomes that is to come out. We'll get into the details of this as we go along.
Right.
Yes, and then so these are supposed to be tools that will facilitate a standard guide to be able to have a systematic approach. You know, there are several ports from different contexts, politically, socially, whatever there is. But then how do we standardize it and get a systematic approach so that we can adopt practices that will improve the environment whilst minimizing the negative impact? So that was basically that. And so judging or coming from this kind of objective, we had to find a way to operationalize.
As a methodology.
Exactly.
For operationalization of the initiative,
That's it. And what is interesting about this is that it didn't have to follow any kind of blueprint.
Okay.
It's a kind of learn as you go. So you want to make it very real to the local situational context of the different ports, but then also comparable to international standards, because we can't have our own that is isolated. It should tie in. So we had to find a way to get the ports themselves. The first methodology was to get the ports that were involved to decide on what their priorities were. Before this time, we had already, like I told you, we had been working, PENAF had been working with the port authorities together with the association PIMOCA. So we have been discussing all these issues and identified these issues, had plans and programs that had come to about 15 issues. 15, but these were a lot. So to start under the Sustainable Ports Partnership, it had to be scaled down, cut down onto what is manageable and will be able to bring about tangible benefits or tangible results.
Right.
And then we can build on from there. And we're not going to decide for the ports, so we have to allow the ports themselves of the process to decide on what they want. Otherwise, you impose. And if you impose, then nothing works. So we first had to get the ports together to debate it, discuss it, interact about it, and then finally they came out with 4 priorities. And that was really interesting. So they came out with the issue of air quality. So how will they improve air quality in the ports? And then they also came up with the issue of waste management in the ports. So how would waste that is generated in the port areas, but also that is coming from shipping, for example, could be managed effectively in a sustainable manner? And then also on coastal erosion, because their activities and their infrastructure development was also affecting the coasts and the living communities. So they added it as one. And then the final one was about energy efficiency.
Energy efficiency.
So so how then do we shift from the conventional use of fossil fuels and to alternatives that are renewable? Solar, gas, whatever there must be, wind energy, whatever there must be. So that was the starting point to get them to agree and then set out their own priorities. And that was it. And then after that, the next thing we did was to then set up working groups.
Okay.
So for each of these issues, we got a working group.
All right.
So these working groups then we have to discuss. We only facilitated, but allowed them in their own way to own the process because they understood that issues better than anybody else. They were involved on the ground. And so then they got that working group for each of these priority areas that had been done. And then together with these working groups, we got them then to develop a kind of a sustainability scenario regarding these 4 issues. The whole idea about the sustainability scenario was to give an overview of what the situation was like for these 4 issues in the different ports. Just to give a big picture and understanding of what it was like, what air pollution was like in the ports. Generally, not within detail, but to give a good description, what energy efficiency status was like, and then what coastal erosion status was like. For that coastal erosion, for all of the issues, it would be different for different ports, but just to get that general overview. And then from that one could get an understanding of that status, but then also how long-term improvements could be made in those areas by considering the causal analysis, so what was causing these challenges, for example, what were the threats, for example, what were the impacts also from them, how were they being managed, for example, and also what were the key barriers to the management as what's being done, and then the actions that were needed to be able to overcome these, and then what were the roles for the different stakeholders? I mean, you've been with the port, so you understand that the port is a huge community with different stakeholders that have different objectives. But what can each of these stakeholders, what role can each of these stakeholders play to be able to really help improve these 4 areas? And then what capacity then is needed to be able to do this? So we got to discuss and then develop this kind of scenario for us. And then the next one is where we have to get to. So
I want you to tell us who constitutes these working groups that you mentioned.
Thank you. So what we do is that we don't try to create new systems or new structures. We work with what exists. So the Port Management Association has its own committees, different committees for different aspects. So the harbour masters have their own committee. They have committees on whatever. There's one on a technical committee on environment.
Right.
So this issue, even though it affects everybody, the core becomes the environmental committee. So members or experts in that committee are the ones that we work with.
Okay.
And then we encourage stakeholder processes. So they go back to make the contact and consultations with the stakeholders in their various ports and then come back. So the core experts we deal with is the environmental experts in the different ports. So for each port, we have gotten them to identify an environmental focal point. So they constitute the members of these working groups.
Okay. So we were about moving to the next one when I came in.
Yes. So the next point had to do with how to develop a kind of sustainability benchmarking. Because you want the ports to have a kind of common approach to doing things, common but differentiated. Because different ports have different levels of development. So, but then you want to still be able to get them to be able to do something about around the issues, and therefore in a very systematic way.
Right.
So it was to develop a kind of benchmark that is to be done. So, but it's part of the methodology that is in place. So developing a sustainability benchmarking that comes with indicators, that comes with targets, and that comes with skills for rating and ranking, but in a very systematic way that the ports themselves can even assess how they are doing, evaluate to see how we are coming forward, and then measure whatever they are doing. In all of these things, it's voluntary because it's not a legal thing, but it's voluntary. That's very interesting about it. And basically, and then the next thing is that once we have this in place, then we're going to also get a kind of third-party verification system. So the ports could do their own kind of assessment, but then we also open it up to a third party, an auditor who can come and in using the benchmarks that we have, evaluate this, and then get into discussion. Say, yes, you say this, but this is what we see. What were the gaps? What were the strengths?
Right.
What were the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? How can we improve? And therefore, so to get an independent third-party assessment. And then after this, the last point, to really get it operational, because all these things are developing things, but how do you bring it, let it take off on the ground concretely, is to pilot a number of ports. Like I said, there are 32 of the ports. We can do this. So to pilot 3 ports. So 3 ports are going to be selected, and then whatever mechanisms...
They have not been selected yet?
It's still being discussed.
Okay.
So we would get there. But then there's a criteria. And the criteria we're looking at is that our sub-region is a bit complicated. We have the language challenge. So we have the French, English, the Portuguese. In fact, there's some small Spanish also somewhere.
Okay.
But the 3 official languages for PIMOCA is French, English, Portuguese. So it's covered that one. And then also there are big and small ports. That's it. And then also there are ports that are in the west.
Yes.
There are ports that are in the central. And then there are also ports that are really up for the sustainability challenge. They want to do something about it. Others are just crawling. So how do you balance these factors and make a choice? So these are the parameters that we're going to use to choose the 3.
Right.
Yes, so that it will be really representative and give us a good idea of what is happening, and then pilot these ports. And then the lessons can be shared and then help and then get the other ports to also latch onto it and build it. So basically, these are the kind of methodologies that we have put in place.
Okay, so out of 15 issues, it was scaled down to 4 as priority areas. And you mentioned air quality, waste management, coastal erosion, and energy efficiency.
Exactly.
And April, next month, will be 1 year since the launch of this initiative. So what success have you achieved so far in all these areas?
Yeah, that's a good one. The issue is that the program took off during a very difficult time globally, the COVID.
Right.
And you know, COVID-19 affected everything that you want to talk about in business, in private life, in everything. So it kind of slowed down. So we had made some progresses, which we're going to talk about, yes, but also had some challenges. But if you want to get on to what has been achieved, I would say a lot of things have been done, but key are 2 things. It is the fact that a port environmental and social sustainability charter for the first time, has been developed.
Okay.
By participants. The
Port Environment and Sustainability Charter.
Charter has been developed. So it was developed by these key experts that I talk about. I mentioned who formed the working groups.
Yes.
And then it was sent to their council meeting. The PIBOCA has a council that meets every year. So that's where all the top decisions are made, just like a board they have their own board, yes, but then their top is a council. So in November, they had the council meeting in Douala, Cameroon. They approved and adopted the charter. So for the first time, we have a port sustainability charter for West and Central Africa. But no other African region. The maritime region for Africa is divided into three. We have the Northern Africa, we have the Eastern and Southern Africa, and then we have the Western and Central Africa. It's the first. So West and Central Africa is the first. So they have developed and then approved and adopted the implementation of a charter. We'll get into the details of that later. So that's one of the major achievements. We can talk about the main goals of this later. But then the second achievement that I will talk about is this emergence of an innovative governance mechanism that is not led by the state. Conventionally, for all organizations of the state, and mostly, you get that decisions and policies, it's always directed by the state.
Right.
But we can see from this project that we're getting a non-state-led governance mechanism, not only at the national level or at the local level, but at the regional level. And that's a huge one. Right. So that the port authorities are not waiting for the state to tell them what they should do. But then the interesting thing is there are some dynamics and nuances here, that the ports are not bypassing the state. So the states get involved in the decision-making, they get involved in the discussions, the meetings, but only as an actor, as one actor, but not the dominant one.
Right.
So the conventional state-led arrangements exist. The ports participate there, but on their own, simultaneously, are developing their own governance arrangement, which is non-state-led. And for me, that's the most interesting thing.
Right.
They're taking their destiny into their own hands and moving ahead of the state in some of the issues. They understand their business. They understand their risks better. They understand what it takes to do what. And therefore, I would say the charter and this governance mechanism that is emerging as the major achievements. And if these are solidified and made to work, we'll see huge transformation in our ports.
All right, so you wanted to go into the details of what the charter entails and what it has spelled out for, these ports and the operationalization of the initiative.
Right. Yes, so to start with, the charter basically aims at creating a common ground. Like I told you, it's not a legal thing that is coming from the International Maritime Organization.
It's an arrangement between the member ports,
yes, so
the 22 ports.
Exactly, so it's voluntary, which is very interesting. So the charter then is to facilitate a common ground among these ports to collaborate among themselves and then be able to adopt common pragmatic actions. That's what the charter is supposed to do.
Right.
And then these actions are meant to mitigate the adverse impacts from the operations and infrastructure, but then also improve the positive benefits of these. And that's really nice. And the main goals of this, so basically from what I've said, the main goals are to harmonize environmental management approach of the ports that are participating in this partnership, but then also to promote the adoption of pragmatic environmental and social sustainability policies. Because you find some practices and policies across the globe, but then how do you bring it to Africa? We have our own kind of context. So this is looking at a pragmatic one that is suitable, of course, accepted and comparable to global practice, but also suited to the local situational context of the ports. So it becomes a kind of common approach, but also differentiated in ways that is made meaningful and adaptable by the ports, and that's it. So, and then also to exchange experiences and practices amongst them as they implement these kind of situations. And that's it. And then from that point, to say the ports are able to assess and improve their performance. So the charter is what binds them together in this way, so that all this kind of fragmented approaches that they are having now could be kind of brought together and harmonized. Yes, and then they can assess, comparing it to the other one, but based on their own circumstances, this one. So we kind of term this as co-petition.
Right.
So it's not competition, but co-petition. So we co-generate, we co-work together, but maybe I need 30% of improvement, and then you need only 20 because of where you stand. But in any case, we are all building up from a certain point and then growing. So basically, that's what it is. And then, so these are in brief.
Yes.
What the chart is supposed
all right,
to drive.
so
but it's a whole text.
Nearly 1 year would have given you an opportunity to assess the commitment level or compliance level, so to speak, of the member ports. What is this like? Commitment and compliance.
Great.
Are they actively involved?
Okay. Commitment, I'll say, is huge. Like I told you from the beginning, it began, or it has, 22 ports in there. And from these 22 ports, you have 96 experts who form the 4 working groups. So 96 experts. And then you have port authorities from 19 countries. Right. So if they were not interested, come on, they don't even get there. So the participation alone, getting in there, shows their kind of commitment that they want in there. And then the next commitment I see is that they are working together, agreeing and understanding. Look, we have a common problem. Can we be able to do it together? And it's being done interactively and inclusively.
Yeah.
If you look at how they identified the 4 issues, for example, they had to work together and agree. And after identifying these 4 issues, being able to work on a charter that the council could approve. So it tells you that they have a certain commitment to change their circumstances. They have a kind of commitment to be able to transition into sustainability. Yeah. And that's it. And then working together, so that's what it is. And then, like I already told you about the charter, co-developing an initiative that is non-legally binding, but voluntary, and they say that we are going together. These already show commitments, and you cannot ignore them at all. They are significant, they are huge. We know what our sub-region is like, and we know how things operate for regional bodies. So it's good these commitments are there, but it doesn't mean that there are not challenges.
Right.
It doesn't mean that there are no challenges.
So we'll come to the challenges, right. But can you tell us in what you expect to see, what results you expect to see in the short, medium, and long term? How soon do you expect that these initiatives that you have rolled out would begin to yield results for the benefit of these, ports? Okay,
that's a good question. It was like we indicated
tangibles, as it were.
We started from April, and by the end of December this year, we expect some results. What has happened to this point is to try to gather all the information, get them together, get them to work together, get them to understand, get them to know that we have to do something. So what is being expected from now, by the end of the year, tangibles, because the charter is seeking tangibles. The charter is saying that, look, we have had enough of talking shops. Right. We have had enough of meetings. We go and talk and come back. But we want to see results, and that's it. So, as they had already agreed on 4 areas, the focus is not just then brought on just anything. Yeah. To be able to measure, to be able to assess, it has to be in these 4 areas. So what is being done now is the implementation stage of all that has been done to get the charter really implemented. And this should be able to take off by end of May, latest. The implementation stage should start. Yes. Now, what is this implementation stage is going to really get to do is now to be able to visit the ports, the pilot ports that I mentioned, the 3 of them, and then pick empirical data.
Which are yet to be picked.
Yes, there's still discussion ongoing, but it's a bit difficult to mention it now because if something changes, but there are 3 areas that covers the 3
I hope Tema is...
Tema has been very active, to be honest.
Right.
Tema has been very active, and Tema Port is a big player.
Yeah.
It's a big player, and it shows the interest and commitment. So some of the factors that are being looked for, Tema
in the
stands
selection
there.
of the criteria.
The criteria, Tema stands there. And Tema is on the list that we are really considering. So it's there. It's also English, so it's among the others. And Tema has been really committed. And so moving on from there is to really get into these, the 3 ports that will be picked eventually, and then collect empirical data, interact with the ports to see what is there, what has to be done. And then what's within the context of the 4 issues, what projects that they want. Because nobody's going to decide for any port that do this, and then if you do this, no. They have to choose what they want. And then tools will be developed to be able to measure what is done with these ports. And then they're going to be linked with investors that are interested in bringing these kind of projects that the ports pick into play. Because you get to understand that public-private partnerships are the way to go. I mean, partnerships are the way to go. The Port Authority does not necessarily need to spend its own money on everything. When it can afford it, it can. If you remember, I said it here at the last meeting that we had, that if it comes to port reception facilities, for example, the ports don't need to spend their own money to do that. There are private operators who have the experience. They understand what it is, they understand what it takes, they have their money. So they come in to invest, you create a kind of, how would you call this? A kind of arrangement, but not a lease, but an arrangement for them, and then they come in, they do their business, but then you also get paid from the profits that they are making. And then the port authorities can then invest their monies into other areas that they would necessarily have to do. So it is also so the concrete projects we're expecting to look up it's yet to be picked up in this implementation stage as the ports are visited. And for the project they identify through international interactions and all the arrangements that are being made will be linked to investors that have interests in those areas. And then from there is what we expect to see these concrete projects. And the ports themselves are really looking forward to. They want something done for themselves. So it's not able to mention now because we haven't gotten them to choose. Of course, we have had interactions with some ports, so there's an idea as to which ports want. But we want to have this official visits to them. We call these ports pilot ports or lead partnering ports, these 3. And then they get there, and then the concrete projects will come up. But it should be within one of these 4 areas. It doesn't mean that the ports cannot invest in other things. Ports that have good practices and perform other things will be recognized and be looked at. But the charter is driving these 4 issues. And we want it to be the starting point. But then it's still flexible to review it as they progress along the line and add on others. But we start from somewhere concretely and then do it in a systematic manner. And so we're expecting that by the end of the year, we will see something from these ports in these 4 areas.
All right, so this is Ion Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we're discussing the Sustainable Port Partnership Initiative in West and Central Africa. Our guest in the studio, Dr. Harry Barnes-Daban, Executive Coordinator, Ports Environmental Network Africa, PENAF. Remember, you can send us your comments through the show via WhatsApp line, dedicated WhatsApp line, which is 0559-019-177, 0559-019-177. We are going for a quick break. When we bounce back, we'll continue the discussion and also take your messages as well. Please stay.
Every now and again, GOIL makes good things happen. This time, GOIL has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. GOIL Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. GOIL Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Gold Super XP RON 95 gives you a smooth driving experience that is less vibrations. Fill up with Gold Super XP RON 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. GOIL has that sorted. GOIL, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. My goods are on the IC, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
All right, so you're welcome back. We're going straight into the inbox to pick your messages. And the first one says, my name is Mensa in Tema. My family deals in spare parts and we import through the port of Tema. How does this sustainable port partnership initiative benefit me, an ordinary consumer? Yes.
Thank you, Mensa, for your question.
Yes.
It's quite an interesting one. How it benefits you is that for you as a stakeholder, I mean, you are an importer, so you are a stakeholder in the port. And as part of this Sustainable Port Partnership, we are getting the ports to institutionalize stakeholder engagement, where they listen to your concerns and your concerns in ways that will be able to reduce negative environmental impact in the ports, but also in the communities around, but also for you as a stakeholder.
Right.
And then how to improve the positive aspects. So, for example, for you who is importing spare parts, you could get to a point where the status of that spare part that is arriving in the port may be subjected to a question. Because if it is allowed to enter into the country, is it going to help pollution or is it going to curb pollution? These are issues that may affect you. I'm just looking at the kind of business that you do. But nobody's going to impose that on you. As part of the stakeholder engagement, the pros and cons of what you do, the impacts of what you do will be assessed, will be discussed. And then when you yourself get to understand why you need to make it more sustainable, you yourself will look for how to do it.
Right.
And then we will do what is right. Because for now, stuff coming into the country is just business as usual. But whether we like it or not, if there are negative impacts, we may not feel it now, but somebody is going to pay for it tomorrow. If old engines, more adjusted ones, are allowed to get into the port and they smoke as they are put in vehicles, somebody's going to pay for it with his health. And if it is with his health, it's also with his economy, with his money, to pay for health. So simply to talk about, the stakeholder engagement is going to get you on board, and then your issues are going to be discussed as it is, in line with how do we make your business efficient through making it sustainable. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so I've been told we can activate the phone lines now for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. The number to dial is 0552 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in and contribute to the discussion. Now we're going to a second message. It says, hi, Kwame here. How does this initiative tie into the ongoing wave to cut down carbon emissions in this industry globally?
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Questioner. The name is...
Kwame.
Kwame, thank you very much for your question. So if you listen to me, you realize that there are 4 areas that has now been decided to work on. Air quality is one, and energy efficiency as well. So the question that you ask ties in with these. Of course, all the other areas also get connected, but I'm looking at the direct issues. And if you agree with me, these issues tie in with the global environmental sustainability agenda of the SDGs, or of reducing carbon emissions. So that's where it is tied toward. It's not only something that is meant to look at it from the local context of where the ports are located, or the countries in which they are located, or the region in which we are located, but they tie in onto the global agenda. So the global agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals are connected to this. African Union's own goals of also fulfilling environmental improvements to build the economy, and then without leaving anybody behind, is also connected to this. So in every aspect, this project is supposed to help the ports to contribute to the achievement of the global sustainability agenda. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So this one says, I'm Francis Nsia. I'm watching you live from Kokomlemle. I think the Sustainable Port Partnership is a laudable initiative, but please ask your guests, to what extent is the difference in language barrier affecting the arrangements put in place?
Thank you very much, Mr. Questioner. You really seem to understand our sub-region very well. And trust me, the Ports Management Association for West and Central Africa has 3 working languages: French, Portuguese, and English. So all our meetings is made up of all these languages that are present. All these languages are present. There is interpretation, there is translation. The documents are also always produced in these 3 languages, and everything is discussed. The project has already set up a kind of a virtual workspace for the ports to put in their information there, but also to take information from there.
Right.
And if you get into that space, it is also in these 3 languages. So no language is left behind. It's properly communicative and very, very inclusive, and everybody's involved in it. No one is being left behind in this.
Right.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Host and your guest. Kindly ask your guest if there are sanctions to ports who do not adhere to the partnership initiative. This one's from Dan in Tema.
Dan, thank you very much for your question. Sanctions are really good. But we are starting from a kind of non-disclosure, not to make people afraid to disclose. So we starting from rather the right word is a confident disclosure. If we begin with sanctions straight away, then you kill the initiative. Then immediately you ask people to go away. Because people have problems. Not that they don't want to address it, they just don't know how. So can we start from the point where we make them open up and talk about their problems, and then we help them to address it from a confident disclosure perspective, and then gradually we all move together. When we get to the point where we know that there's enough capacity, there's enough knowledge, there's enough technology, then we can really begin to bring in the issues of sanctions. But for now, it's a new thing that we're starting. We don't want any discouragement. We want everybody to be part of us. So we're starting from the point of confident disclosure. So sanctions, not yet. It's voluntary, and we want it to keep going, to keep kicking. And when it gets institutionalized, things will fall in place naturally. They'll fall in place. Thank you.
All right. This one says, my name is Lawrence. You have probably mentioned this earlier. I am curious to know what role the World Bank is playing here, and what does the World Bank seek to achieve or benefit here?
Thank you. Yes, so you're very right. I already mentioned it. The project belongs to the Port Management Association for West and Central Africa.
Sure.
The role of the World Bank is financing the project to be able to institutionalize this innovative governance arrangement. And that's it. So the World Bank does not dictate what should be done. And I already indicated, the working groups are the focus. They decide on what they want, and then they come up with it. It takes time, it's iterative, but they are allowed to own the process. So it's theirs. And therefore, the World Bank is only supporting the ports to achieve what they want to do. Thank you.
All right, so this one says, I'm Nestor from Takwa. Can your guests tell us which countries are involved in this particular arrangement? You have a list of the countries involved in West and Central Africa?
Thank you very
22
much.
Ports.
22 ports. So,
Yes.
I mean, you can easily, several of all of them. I mean, Ghana, Nigeria, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, they're all there, but 22 ports. And to mention that is a long list. I'm not going to be able to mention every list here. But please, you could just Google it and then find the countries, the coastal countries that you have in the sub-region. And you'll find all of them. They're all participating, 22 of them, please.
Okay. One says, my name is Samuel. Please, the gentleman is talking about pollution. And I want to ask him, didn't they see the 49-year-old cars that are still working in our country? So I don't think used spare parts generate pollution. He probably is a used spare parts dealer or something. And what are they doing for that 49 years that are still in the system? Old cars that are still in the system here. His name is Samuel.
So, Samuel, thank you very much for your question. It's very interesting. And you can see that in my answer to the earlier question from the spare parts dealer, I did not say that they are going to be thrown away. No. If a 49-year-old car has a well-serviced engine and it's not polluting, it is already meeting the standards of the partnership.
And not emitting smoke.
It's already meeting the standards. So that's where we're coming from. If it's 49 years, works good, you can see a steam coming out of the exhaust when it's parked. Come on, it's good to go.
Right. All right, so let's continue with the discussion. What are some of the next steps you envisage that would take place, after you have achieved your first objectives of, dealing with the 4 issues that you raised, which has to do with the quality of air, waste management, coastal erosion, and energy efficiency?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, but I think I've already run ahead of myself in some ways in our discussion. The next steps, like I told you, we have done all these discussions and meetings virtually that has put together the necessary information. Thanks to COVID, it was difficult to travel. But thankfully, it's also getting easy now. So the doors are open now that we can travel. So that brings us to the implementation stage. So that's where we start from the next steps, is to go visit these countries. We cannot go to all the 22, but we have picked 3.
Aren't those that you don't visit going to be angry that you haven't visited them?
Yes, it's going to be difficult, but
because you have to, play and even give a fair playing field and so that everybody would kind of like.
And that's why I gave you the criteria.
Yes.
So the criteria is a starting point. But we're also going to have a mix of things. That if the team is visiting Ghana, for example, it will adapt another country that is not chosen as part of the 3 to join the team.
Right.
And then so the discussions in Ghana would till that person, that expert from whichever port, for example, and then he also learns from there. So, and then in the same way, if the team has to visit another country, another port that is selected, then also another port that is not part of it also joins. So give and take, by the time it's finished, 6 ports would have gotten involved. But apart from this, there's also going to be a data collection process that will still involve those who are not really selected to be physically visited, also to collect data information from them. Because the truth is that 22 countries within a space of 1 year, I mean, it's not possible to do everything, to go to all of them. But it's also understood that it's not the end of the project. it's only the beginning. Just to have something that is very representative of the region, and then we're going to continue. So the same process that is adopted for the 3 now will be extended to others after they have been piloted with the program, the benchmarking program that we have developed. So each port will have their turn. We will get there, but it can be done in piecemeal. It can be done, or otherwise it becomes huge and confused and we don't know what to do. But whatever also comes up from these 3 are still shared with all the others. And then after the phase of testing, and then, when you do the testing, the piloting, then you can do the calibration and see what has to change, what has to be adjusted, and then each port will have its turn. But then we have to do it gradually. We phase it. So every port will have their turn.
All right.
We just have to start from somewhere.
Okay. So your organization, the Ports Environmental Network Africa, PENAF, has been doing some work in all these ports for some time now. And you should be in a position to tell us which ports are doing well as far as these 4 issues that you have raised, these 4 issues that they have catalogued are concerned, where they want to place premium or priority. Which ports are doing well?
Thank you for your question. But it's also a political one. So I also have to be political in my response. Different ports are doing different things in different areas.
Right.
So I have done some work, yes, but I have not comprehensively compared all the 22. You do different comparative analysis in different places. And you need to have the data to support what you say. So what I would say now is that each port is at a different level of progress when it comes to these things. So it's for example, if you pick the issue of coastal erosion, the ports that face this hugely, our immediate neighbors, there are more, but just to give example, are basically Togo and Benin, for example. So that's it for them. So you cannot compare coastal erosion issues among other ports that don't really face it. Because those who face it in big time, in big ways, will be maybe doing something more or doing something less. And therefore, it's difficult to have that kind of comparative thing. But each port has its own strengths. And that's what we want to build on. That's why we are going to get them, or getting them now to share information, so that I know that Lome is handling its coastal erosion in this way. Mine has just started. I mean, in Ghana, we also have it, except it's not close to us. So it goes eastwards. So you find it more in the Volta areas. And what we find in the western part of Accra is, it's there, but it's not as devastating as you can find towards the coast, so towards the eastern part. And so that's what the analysis goes. So I wouldn't rush to say which one is doing what at the stage. Each port is doing at a different level, and we want to bring them all together to share knowledge and experiences. When we have done this project and then we have come up with the common criteria and benchmarks, then we will be able to show that for these 4, this port did that, and that port did that. And it's going to be tied with an award scheme. And that's why we need a third-party verification. And then it doesn't become a debate, but it's legal. So that's what I would say now.
All right.
It's a political question, you have to be careful.
All right. Last time you were here, we took a look at waste reception facilities in the ports. How are we faring?
It's still being discussed with the Port Management Association of West and Central Africa. So we're looking at it. We're still trying to pick data from different ports. The association currently is on a mission in a number of ports. So in all these ports that it is going, it is picking the information and picking the data. And what we have at this stage is that PENAF is building a collaboration with the European port reception facilities operators. And what we want to do is to also set up an African association of the providers of port reception facilities. And of course, there are some ones that are really good, and there are some ones that also need to build capacity. But we want to bring everybody together and then be able to take them along on visits, that they can see what is happening elsewhere, get them to understand why they have to do what. I mean, if you come to Ghana, for example, there are some operators here who don't even understand what they are doing. Because they see it as business and they're doing business. But do we throw them away because of that? No. They need to be helped with capacity, with the knowledge and with the practice of what it takes. And if they get it, they will be able to do what it is. I mean, take Zeal, for example, in Integrated. Huge, because he understands what he's doing. A couple of them also in Tema. Yeah, maybe I don't go too much more, but they know. They've been there for a long time, they understand. But so we need them to show the experience of what there is. And even for these ones, they still lack some capacity also elsewhere. And so with this partnership with Europe, we are not asking Europe to come and impose on us. No. It's a question of learning lessons. Right. They could also learn certain indigenous lessons from us. And that's why we say partnership is key. So we are working on that, and hopefully we should be able to do. We've already had one webinar online, but we're trying to get a physical meeting when the sanctions on COVID is eased. But we need to choose which country is ready to host it. And then bring all these research facility operators together and let them know that it's about capacity building, knowledge generation to help them to do their job better. And it's business. It helps the economy. It grows the system in which we all find ourselves now. So that's the work that we are doing. So still collecting data.
With respect to air pollution, you mentioned it's one of the issues, and I just want to find out from you whether we have up-to-date or state-of-the-art equipment to be able to measure the amount of polluted air we have, and whether indeed the air we have at the moment is the right one that we should have.
State of the art. That's a good question.
Modern equipment. So to speak.
Okay, so I think I prefer that one. Best available technology to meet your needs.
Yeah.
But the issue also is that pollution monitoring is not as simple as this. It's also huge. So are you going to look at what kind of indices do you want to look at, for example? Because if you go too broad, then you also get too broad things and then you don't even do anything. But if you scale down on what are your important parameters or indicators or indices, they can build on. So, for example, if you pick, for most of the ports, I want to, not only Tema, not only Takrady, but for most of the ports, when it comes to air pollution issues, clinker dust is a huge problem.
Clinker
dust. That's from, so the cement producing companies, they are one across the ports. So if you want to monitor air quality in a port, for example, one of your indices that you want to look at will be particulate matter. Because clinker is so fine. So which one do you want to see? So you want to use that one, for example. Now, on the issue of climate change also, then you want to also maybe look at ozone-depleting substances, for example, or carbon emissions, maybe from trucks that are coming in, also even from the equipment that are used in the ports. So it boils down to picking a few parameters. For me, if I have just 3 or 4 indices, is okay. And then as for the monitoring equipment, if even it's not available in Ghana, it's available everywhere. You can source it from anywhere. And the Port Authority, once again, I get into this public-private partnership deal. I'm a firm believer in partnerships. The port authorities don't need to invest their own monies in this. Do it together with the private investor, for example. Because if the port authority doesn't even have the skill, the ability to read and interpret the readings and the measurements that is being taken, for example, that's the issue there. So equipment can be available. If you get into private sector partnership, together you decide on which indices that you want to monitor, and then you set it rolling. So they pick it up, they interpret the results, and then the results that the port authority finds, you make a policy out of it. And it's not a one-time thing. It should be continuous monitoring.
Right.
Then you will know better. You start, and then you get your baseline data. So that is what will say, because your baseline data will tell you where you stand. And then you will know how to bring it down. And the continuous monitoring will let you know if it's coming down or if it's still going up. And then also, you have to install these stations at certain locations, because if you're monitoring cement production for particulate matter, and then you set up your equipment in how many kilometers far away, you don't get the results. So you choose the location that can really pick it up for you. And then from there, you can make a decision. And once it's clear, the cement factories will understand. They know it. They know it. And then together, you can then get them on targets, reduction targets, and a period under which they will have to do this. And then it can always be negotiated, can always be discussed, but just start from that point.
Do you think the World Bank is willing to support countries which are unable to acquire some of these equipment, you know, to do their work and to ensure that they have the right, you know?
At this stage, I'm not able to speak for the World Bank. They have their own policies. They have their own things that they want to support, and so and what they want to fund. In this project that we have,
you mentioned the funding,
exactly.
So yeah, sure.
This is what we have. Air quality is there. So, like I said, they're going to link the ports into investors, to investors who are able to help the ports do this. So, yes, they are prepared to support in that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be their funding, but the investment network that they create should be able to help the ports to do this. Yes.
You are an environmental specialist. We just want to find out from you. You mentioned the issue of clinker dust as one of the most serious issues affecting ports across West and Central Africa. What do you think can be done, you know, to perhaps engage these companies that manufacture spent and that, you know, take delivery of their whatever in the ports to be able to bring their dust limits to their dust pollution to acceptable limits?
You want to get me into trouble, right? But I'll still answer you. And I will talk from personal experience in practice, not just reading or anything. With two ports. But, okay, I would avoid certain names. In Tema, for example, I mean, GASM had been there for all the years, and it was a big problem. But the Port Authority, at some point, this was between the late 90s and early 2000s, the Port Authority was then really serious about it because the issue was that it was not going to affect staff or people who use the port when they are in their active years like now. It comes up maybe when you have retired. And then your lungs are already filled up with this dust, and then you get into all this kind of cardiac whatever. So, together with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Port Authority engaged GASM. And GASM was responsive to it.
Right.
It took some time, yes, but it was all the negotiation and the discussions. They installed some trappers and some equipment that would then be able to trap whatever was getting out of the factory. And then within the ports, the system is very, very, very out of fashion.
Right.
The clinker is picked from the vessel by grabs into a hopper. And as the grabber gets into the hopper and opens up, the air is out there. Then the hopper discharges it into a truck. As it is discharging, the air is blowing. And then these trucks will have to travel from the port into the factory. As it is going, so these issues, for example, were looked at. So then GASM had to install, so in the factory, of course, they installed all these trappers. And then at the discharge point at the berth, they installed sprinklers. So it could control the emission of it. And then on the way also they sprayed water, and then they got the trucks also covered with tarpaulins, so that as it traveled, So to some extent, something was done. But was it adequate? Was it enough? We're still suffering.
Yeah.
So when Dangote, for example, was coming, Dangote was going to be sited close to Community 2. That was a living neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we had the youth coming up and saying that we know what is happening in Gaza. We're not going to allow this here. But thankfully, technology makes things available and possible.
Yeah.
So what we did was to shop around. And Dangote was very cooperative.
Yeah.
We shopped around and then got a country that had a technology that was useful. So people were flown to the country, looked at it, the system's there. So Dangote's technology that was approved had to be vacuum-sealed tanks. Okay. So when they were not bringing in clinker, they were bringing in cement.
We have just 30 seconds.
Exactly, yeah. So then these tankers, vacuum tankers, were coupled to the vessels and pumped into the tankers, and then they drove to the factory, and then discharged also through it, and then so then the problem of emission was solved.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
So that's how we draw the curtain on tonight's edition of Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television. Our guest has been Dr. Harry Barnes-Daban, Executive Coordinator, Port Environmental Network Africa, PNAF, and we've been discussing the Sustainable Port Partnership Initiative in West and Central Africa. Our sponsors are the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, that's Ghana Revenue Authority, Goil Company Limited, Serene Insurance, and Ghana Link Network Services, the operators of the Integrated Customs Management System, ICOMS, at our ports. And the show is powered by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Remember, the abridged version of the show is aired on Ghana Television every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Make a date and watch that one as well. We say a very big thank you to you for staying with us. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, next week we shall come your way again with another wonderful edition of Iron Port. I wish you a spare week ahead and stay blessed.